Should the government stop giving money to the NHS? That's our question now. 020 7862 2222. We're asking this after the Labour health advisor, Paul Corrigan, warned it wouldn't be feasible to give the NHS more money if it doesn't improve. Last year, the Department for Health spent an eye-watering £181.7 billion, the vast majority on day-to-day items like staff salaries and medicines. 99% of it is funded from taxes and national insurance. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has previously said he would treat the NHS with tough love and has launched an external audit of the health service because he says their policy, Labour's policy, is it's broken. Let's just have a look at one quick stat which illustrates what Wes Streeting is saying. So here we are inside a rather brand new hospital. What's going on inside the NHS? Let me do a timeline. 2016, 17, 18, 19, all the way up to this year, 2024. And we'll pick an envelope here of middle of 18 to the middle of 23. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year, a 5-year timeline. And if we have a look at this 5 years, what we see is that they put in more staff, they put in more money, but patients aren't getting more treatment. So the increase in staff on that window in the timeline, 23%. The money's gone up nearly 20%, but patients starting treatment has only gone up 3%. And thanks to the BBC for this great graphic. So it's an analysis of NHS Digital, King's Fund and NHS England data. That and that and that. It's incredible, isn't it? So, Carole, what's going on?
You know, it is astonishing, and I'm encouraged when I hear Corrigan and Streeting saying they're going to have tough love and they can't have more money until they change. Because you know, historically the NHS has always been toxic. It's been a poisonous child, and it certainly was in the last year of the Tories' reign. Yeah, because in the last year of the Tories' reign, they don't want to interfere with the sacred cow because they know it's politically toxic for them. If they start saying the NHS has got to change, people are going to go, no, we love the NHS. However, you know, we have to understand that the UK ranks number 6 on the lists in countries of health expenditure, so as a percentage of your GDP. We spend 11.3% of our GDP on the health service. Now, that ties us with countries like Switzerland, which is often held up as the gold standard, both for outcomes and for health care, and we're not having the outcomes. There are countries that spend much less money than us, which are relatively the same size, much less money, countries like Belgium, Denmark, Austria, New Zealand, and they have much better outcomes on much less cash. So it has to be the way the NHS is being run. And the problem we've had in years gone by is it's been treated as the deity. It's a sacred cow. You can't mess with it. Well, we're going to have to mess with it.
What do we do?
Because your graph just showed.
But I don't know what we do. I mean, the idea seems to be put more money in.
Yeah, well, the Health Foundation think tank showed it per head. If you want to match Germany, for instance, you'd have to spend 55% more. Now, Paul Corrigan is right that you can't just give it money. You need a plan. If you give it extra money, and it's going to be part of the answer, you want it spent better to improve the NHS. Because if you look at those figures now, the 6 years before, the tightest financial straitjacket in the history of the NHS had been imposed. Then they started spending, but they haven't got the results coming through. And it does need reform, but it's not been unreformed. It's changed throughout its life. But they've got to work out what's good, what produces results, and what doesn't. But they have more of what produces results.
Yeah, but they have had reforms. You know, they've had a situation where a government comes in. There's a guy called Andrew Lansley, who's a Conservative. He explained to me once his great idea for reforming. I couldn't understand it. And then someone else said, he's the only one who understands it. Yeah, well, and that was 5 years.
Yeah, and if you remember, he came in, they tried to reform it twice, the Conservative government. The second set of reforms tried to undo the first set of reforms from Lansley, which was essentially to produce some type of internal market, which didn't work. So everything was supposed to be competing against each other, and it just didn't work. So they had to unpick it.
We can't be giving any more than 181 billion, which is what it had last year. That's a lot of money. We're just not using it correctly. And I think there are very obvious ways to
go on, give us one, because I don't know what they are.
One, procurement in the NHS, to buy the medicines and the products. You know, we waste £8 or £9 billion a year on just buying too much, chucking it away.
Well, we saw that with Michelle Malone.
Too many managers, too many quangos, too many organisations, too many people on 6-figure salaries. And I don't mean the doctors, I mean the managers in the suits. And not enough people.
Is that right? I don't know.
No, you'd say the King's Fund, another very informed health think tank, says actually, if you look at management and how much is spent, it's in line with what happens in the private sector. I know if there are excessive managers being overpaid, not doing a job, I agree, move them out. But that won't solve it. But procurement is an area it could improve.
Plus,
I have family members working in the NHS, and they see sometimes the waste on what is bought in, and companies.
Oh, like they give you a pair of crutches and they can't take them back again.
That's an example.
Yes.
When I had a hip operation years ago, I had to have loads of equipment, loads of stuff, and when it was over, I went to take it back, and my doctor said no. And I rang the hospital and said, "Do you want it?" They said, "No, throw it away." I said, "Throw it away? What are you talking about?" Anyway, I took it to my local care home and gave it to them there because there was crutches, there was these tables you sit at when you can't walk, there was a pushy thing. All of that, they said, there must have been a grand's worth of equipment, and they said, throw it away.
Yeah, no, ridiculous.
It's outrageous.
Pamela's in Birmingham. Hi, Pamela. What do you think about this idea that we just can't put more money into the NHS?
I think it's a bit like a bottomless pit. Yeah. What we should be doing is stopping agencies making so much money out of the NHS.
Yep.
Staff who are not sometimes committed to particular hospitals. Also, senior managers, when that came in, that's when the death knells started. Yeah. And I really think those two things are what's draining the health service.
What about the idea, Pamela, of just this idea that you get now letters and the letters go through the post? And should we just go totally digital? Everything comes by email.
You can't do it.
I think that will disadvantage older people.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
We know a friend of ours, he's 85. He doesn't use mobile phones. He's a very intelligent man, but he's just not interested and has to use the health service. So I think it should be a joint thing, both
you're right.
be installed.
Pamela, you're right. It's rather like if you bank, you can ask for paper statements, or you just look at them online. And
yes,
I think
but there should be a choice.
Exactly.
Well,
I agree.
We can't afford the choice. That's the point. We can't go on like this.
I know, but Pamela's also, and she talks about agency fees. You know, if you're an agency doctor or nurse, you get 3 times for a shift that you would if you're
because that gives them flexibility, doesn't it?
But
that's the point.
It doesn't matter. We need to get more trained nurses, and we've got them. In fact, the graph you just showed we have enough staff. We've increased the numbers of staff. Also, I think the NHS is becoming too political. It's becoming a political arm now, and it shouldn't be. The BMA, it's become political. And did you see the story this week about
that's a trade union, the BMA.
I know it is.
Yeah, but no, so it's not the NHS itself.
Well, but it employs lots of doctors who work for the NHS.
Do you think the doctors deliberately brought down the last government?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And also, but did you see the thing from the Royal College of Physicians?
The last government brought itself down.
Not single-handedly, but it helped.
They didn't help it. Let's put it like
because
that.
it's also said it's not going to have any more strikes now. But the Royal College of Physicians this week put out a memo saying that every time you have a hospital consultation appointment, the consultant has to push climate change.
Didn't say that.
Yes, it did say that.
I saw how the Daily Mail
and I saw the quote from the guy who works for the RCP.
That is not going to happen. That just was ridiculous.
Well, it is ridiculous. Doctors are kicking out about it.
Yeah,
they're worried about it.
I think it's one of those silly stories. Pamela, thank you so much. We'll take some more calls after the break. Now your calls, more calls on whether it's time to say the NHS gets no more money. They got 180 billion last year. Is it time to say, look, we're sorry, we're going to have to comb the whole thing off and, basically rebuild it like they're doing with the M25? Lola in Middlesex, hello.
Oh, hello there. Hi, Jeremy. I'm a first-time caller, so I'm a little bit nervous.
Don't you worry at all. You're most welcome. And you worked in the NHS, Lola?
I used to. I used to work in the admin section of a hospital in London.
Okay.
And I agree with a lot of what Carole has said, actually. There's a lot of wastage and duplication of effort. But what I also found is that you cannot get rid of incompetent people in the NHS.
Yeah,
that's my experience. They move them around from one department to another. And I don't know if it's because of the strength of the unions or because the managers sometimes just don't care. Some of them are just feathering their nest. They just want to keep everything, easy for them, and they don't want to upset the apple cart.
Yeah, it may be these public sector jobs. I'm treading carefully here, but we're not talking about the medics, but sort of people who are middle managers who are able to just basically, they spend their whole time, the only work they ever do is to stop themselves getting made redundant, fundamentally.
A lot of those, I think Lola's spot on there. It's a combination of both, Lola. But, what you read all the time is these managers in hospitals where there's a big scandal at the hospital, these managers who are on 200, 300 grand a year, you then see them turning up at another hospital a year later.
I don't know if they're, as Lola says, there are not very many of them. Lola, when people complain about managers, I always go, what about Lola? What about admin? What about payroll? You guys are quite important, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, no, we are, and we need to be managed properly. But I think when you have got incompetent people in a team, the rest of the team are carrying them.
Yeah.
I used to work in the private sector, and if somebody couldn't do the job, we made sure that they got adequate training and lots of support. And if they still couldn't do it, we let them go and do something they could do.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. You'd pay something called the sack tax, wouldn't you? Which is basically you'd embed in a bit of compensation to get rid of people. I don't know. The public sector doesn't work like that. They just.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are private sector failures too. But if you've got a problem in the public sector, like Lola says, you've got to tackle it in the end. And Lola, you get it because you're a colleague. You don't want to be working alongside people who are incompetent or lazy or whatever it is.
Lola, when they try to get rid of these people who are just drifting around in suits, they will take the NHS to a tribunal and they'll probably win.
Yeah, I know. And can I just say, Jeremy, as an aside, a few months ago, I think there was something about Jeremy Clarkson being the sexiest man on telly.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, but Kevin Maguire blows him out of the water.
I love your timing.
Should have been him.
I love your timing on that. That's the best.
And with you, Jeremy, in a close second.
Brilliant.
Lola, you've got to go and get your eyes tested.
You had
on
me
the NHS.
Completely there. That's brilliant. Thank you, Lola. Thank you. Brilliant call. Call again. David in Shropshire, hi.
Oh, hello. Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with a lot that's being said, and things do need being sorted out. But the National Health Service is the most important thing that people have in this country, and it's always been free at the point of need. And if ever we was to lose our health service, the only people that would be able to afford health care would be the very rich, while everybody else would fall by the way.
Yeah, but hang on. We need to avoid sort of the sort of statements that don't help us here. I mean, you say it's there for everyone. Dental care isn't. Dental care is part of the NHS. The unspoken thing by any politician is that a lot of people don't have a dentist anymore. They use bits of string.
And yours, right? But David, it's not right to say that the poorest people wouldn't get care. In countries like Germany, you have an amount taken out if you're working, and you get an amount taken out of your tax that is commensurate with what you earn. It's not the same for everyone, and that works. They don't have waiting lists there. In France, they don't have waiting lists, and the poor people do not suffer in either country.
So so David, what about that? You say to everyone, you take the top 50% of earners, and you say you're going to have to make your own way.
No.
I don't know. It'd worry me a lot, really. I mean, yes, there are a lot of changes that needs to be made, but to radically do the things that some people suggest is very worrying, really.
All right. Well, listen, don't let us worry you. Don't let us worry you.
I agree with David. Look, we take it for granted at sometimes, but it's there. It's always there for you. And there are gaps in it. You're quite right. Dentistry is a big gap where people can't get dentists. We don't want that to happen to the rest of the service.
Well, that's the canary in the coal mine.
But
it is already. Now,
it's
yesterday
not always there. We've got to stop pretending it's always there. In 2023, 14,000 people died needlessly because they were sitting in corridors waiting to get more than 12 hours in corridors waiting to get a bed.
What about cancer, undiagnosed cancers?
I'm just giving you one example. Yeah. Of course, there's all of that. So it's not always there when you need it. It certainly wasn't there during COVID when cancer people
You're making a good case for more doctors, nurses, and actually spending more. And I think we've got to be careful. We
just saw the graph.
As we're discussing the problems, you've got to remember a lot of people work incredibly hard and they're incredibly skilled.
We're not saying they don't.
They do unpaid overtime. Nurses are often short on shift.
Yeah.
They're
And
run
what about
off their
the
feet. You've
people-
got to remember that.
Something is going
What
wrong.
about the people who are dying and not getting seen? I wanted to ask the gentleman, David, before. I wanted to ask him if he's ever tried to ring a hospital before. Because I've tried to make an appointment recently. You literally can't get through.
Appointment at a hospital?
Yeah, an appointment at a hospital.
I would turn up in
You
person,
literally
I
cannot
think.
get through.
And there are other people getting appointments. GPs treat more people than ever. But there is a big problem. There's 7.5 million people on waiting list. That's
GPs
risen. And it's
might
not
be
all
treating more
because of
people than ever,
COVID.
but on Zoom, not in person.
Well, sometimes Zoom
Which is-
works.
I don't mind a
Often it
Zoom.
doesn't.
I don't mind a Zoom.
Because you're
Because I'm
relatively
incredibly young.
You're
Incredibly young.
incredibly
Yeah,
young
it's
and
this
healthy.
phrase you're looking for, yeah.
Whereas elder people.
You should have the choice. If you want to go to the surgery, you
But
should
a lot
have
of
that
people
choice.
don't.
Well, we may have to change that. I don't know. John in Suffolk, hi.
Hi.
I don't know, it's a bit miserable, this, isn't it? Because I suppose what we're working out here is that the NHS is now unable to do the job it's supposed to do, maybe because we're 69 million people. I don't know. What do you think?
It's not the National Health Service anymore.
No.
It's different private trusts. They do not work together. A simple little thing I'll tell you. I was almost 30 years on the ambulance service. And if you had a soiled blanket, years ago, we left them at the hospital and we had one of their blankets. Now, the ambulance has got to travel 30 miles back to its base to get a clean blanket. It's crazy. They do not work together.
No,
And you've got
it does
all
sound
these-
like one of these things where you just need some common sense, don't you?
I read a piece by a doctor yesterday who said whole departments, back at what John says, don't talk to each other, don't work with each other, and so it's all disjointed, and that makes sense.
Yeah, sense isn't always common, and you do need common sense. You're right, but he's picked up. It's been atomised and broken up, and the whole idea was bits. You could then make them financially responsible for just what they do, but then it means the hospital isn't going to help the ambulance isn't going to help the hospital, and you then get chaos.
They've got to have to crack through this waiting list. They've got to cut it to
They've got to. It's
zero.
interesting. Up until fairly recently, people were sticking up for the NHS. Now satisfaction levels are on the floor. It's 23%
Yeah, I
now,
noticed that.
whereas in
Yeah.
2010 it was 70%.
One of the reasons Labour won the election.
Thanks for all your calls.